At DKP & Co Chartered Accountants, we are more than just accountants. We are business advisors, taxation consultants, and strategists that specialise in setting up businesses. We understand the client and give them the very best customised advice and strategies to achieve their goals. Visit our website dkpco.com.au or give us a call today on 03 9023 9370. Fast, proactive, personal. That's DKP & Co Chartered Accountants.
Ever wanted a career in football? At the Global Institute of Sport, you can now study a master's degree in football business or football coaching and analysis right here in Australia. GIS is the largest provider of sports degrees in the UK, with campuses at Wembley and Etihad Stadium. Learn online with unique access to the iconic MCG and a big-hitting Australian industry network. Be one of the first Australians to get a football master's degree and join GIS's global network of football leaders. Apply now to start in February 2023. Learn more at gis.sport/FNR. That's gis.sport/FNR.
You're listening to the State of Our Football Nation on FNR. And it's the Global Institute of Sport that sponsors our program each and every week. Pokuah Frimpong is my co-host and the driver of the program. She has a on running the ship and making sure we don't run aground. And we are in Docklands, and there was a ship that ran aground, a ferry the other day. Let's not star in the making. Had a football career out of Adelaide. His name is Awer Mabil. Has been chosen as the Young Australian of the Year. What did you make of that? I'm
really happy for him, and I think it's a beautiful and inspirational thing because
it is,
obviously from a migrant background myself, to see someone like him do that and achieve what he's achieved, I'm incredibly proud of him, and I know the community at large is really, really proud of him.
I think also too, it gives us, they say you can't be what you can't see. We've got a Young Australian of the Year. Actually, there are a couple, but one very special one for me is Susan Crowe, or Sue Crowe, AM, former community president of Football South Australia and for about a decade, and the deputy chair of the Asian Football Confederation. So he's doing some tremendous work and has done. And I notice also from Queensland, Andrew Candle, the OAM, and Owen Pezzett, OAM, and of course from New South Wales, David Swan. They've all received members of the Order of Australia, and I would imagine that Football Australia's CEO, James Johnson, is wearing the news that Sue Crowe has got herself a gong during the Australia Day honours. What did you make of it, Michael? Welcome to the program.
Thanks, George. Fantastic honour for Sue, having worked with her for about 6 years. Just a wonderful human being and done some outstanding work at the club and within the community. So, yeah, I don't think there's a more deserving person, George. I'm sure you know her quite well as well. So, really, really happy to hear that.
Over the last half a dozen years, we did so many Australia Day presentations. We handed out oodles of what they call Australia Day certificates for those wanting to be new Australians, all, being sworn in and feeling very, very fortunate to be part of the lucky country down under. So the work that Sue did, the opportunities to bring the people to the club, to get them onto the pitch so they could swear their oath to Australia in front of the players, in front of the audience, that was tremendous. And she's done it, or she did it without missing a beat. And now, of course, she's sitting back and relaxing. She's not only a very proud mum, because we should add that Sue Crow's daughter is a world champion rower, an Olympic champion, and, of course, in her own right, a professional who's spending quite a time in Canberra. She's a lawyer. What isn't she doing? So she's a proud mum, she's a proud Australian, and she's a very proud member of the new honours list. So you're right, Sue Crow has an awful lot to be thankful for, but by golly, she's done some tremendous work, as has the father of the family. Max would be beaming from ear to ear, wouldn't he, Michael?
Yeah, I'm sure he'd be very proud of Sue and what she's achieved and this honour. And they're a great family.
Yeah, they have been. Yep.
Just great people. Just great people.
Speaking of family, you've been part of the broader Melbourne City family and the City Group for now. Is it how many years is it? Is it 6 or is it 8?
It's right in between, George. 7, coming up to 7 years now.
So I missed on both guesses. Well done, George.
Well, you got the range right.
Yeah, thank you for that. Now tell me, you know this Awer Mabil too, because you've spent some time in South Australia. You know where all the great young talent and that fabulous nursery that is South Australia. What have you made of the great honour that the young man received last night?
Yeah, I've known Awer for a long time. I went to see him play for Katie Vidmar's South Australian Institute of Sport team when he was 14 or 15. Actually 14, I think he was. And we signed him into our youth league at Adelaide when I was there, and then gave him his first professional contract. So I'm really proud to have been part of that journey. And whilst I was in Adelaide, we did start the Barefoot to Boots campaign that Awer was obviously instrumental in starting, along with Ian Smith, back in Adelaide, and it's just grown and over the years, and I see Awer go back, basically every year in his off season to the refugee camp that he spent quite a bit of time in before he came to Australia, to give back to those kids. Opportunities and even material things that he never had the opportunity to take or to have. Absolutely fantastic honour for Awer, and well deserved. And he's just a good young person who has fantastic morals and values, and a very generous young man.
My co-host, Pokuah Frimpong, is a Ghanaian who arrived in this country very, very young. She's doing some tremendous work on Paramount Plus, calling the women's game, and just learning the caper and doing it as well as she possibly can. And she has, a bit like Awer, she has that hunger to want to be better, which is fantastic. But can you take us back to those early days? What did you see in this outstanding young man at that time that said to you, or added to you and said to you, yeah, we need to pick this young man because there's something about him? What was it that lifted you and said, come on, let me sign a contract?
Yeah, well, the game I went to see, his team was losing. I think they were 2-0 down, and Tony Vidmar, I think Awer at that time was the youngest player in the team. He was on the bench. He came on with about half an hour to go, and he completely changed the game. I'm sure he scored a goal and then created enough havoc to score another 2, and they won the game 3-2. And just his enthusiasm, his passion, obviously he was very quick and had electric pace, but just the passion to play football, and not many people know the story, but his first contract wasn't a great one. It was basically minimum wage, and the first thing he did. I remember talking to him, what are you going to do with your money? Well, you've got some money now, you need to save. He said, oh, no, the most important thing, I need to buy my mother a car because she catches public transport to go and work. And she's done a lot for me, and I'm going to spend my first years paying for a car for mum. And that tells you, all you need to know about the kid. And well, he's a young man now, but at that time, we're talking about a 16-year-old boy. As I said, I'm just wrapped for Awer. He's just a great person, and really happy that he's had a great future. He's a Socceroo, and still doing good things in the community.
Is that, when you speak about his character and things like that, is that important for you when you're looking at a player that you're thinking about for your club? Like, they have to have, they can be great, but if they don't have the stuff inside that makes you like a good human being, they're just not right for your club?
Yeah, spot on. It's something that, over the years, and I've been doing it now for 18 years, is one thing that's not negotiable now is the person's character. And I'd rather take a less talented player who's a really good person than a more talented player who's perhaps, a little bit questionable in terms of his character, because, to have success and certainly sustained success, it's important to have good people. And I don't think it matters, what industry you're talking about. If you're working with and around good people, you normally have success, and you can have sustained success. Whereas if you've got a couple of dodgy characters in and around the place, normally something goes wrong somewhere and things fall apart. So it's a very, very important part of recruitment.
Isn't it amazing that here we are on a football program and we're talking about recruiting people and employing good people, and it matters. And you've said after your 18 years, you can now say, without missing a beat, I would rather have access and wild animals in the background.
Yeah, sorry, George.
That's all right. What's the dog's name?
Luna. Yeah, she's hearing some noise.
Luna said we were talking about good people, and Luna said, I support that. Let me.
Luna's gone. Yeah, count me in as well. But,
I think you want to be a part of the show.
But good character is so special, eh? You've seen it now. You've seen it time and again. You saw it in Adelaide, and you've seen it again throughout your stint in Melbourne City. And, of course, the City Football Group allows you to travel the world, and you've seen it used now time and time again. We saw the arrival of Ange Postecoglou in Japan for Yokohama, again under the City Football Group. We saw Kevin Muscat again arrive there, and all good characters. And when I say good characters, there are people who will question that, especially when it comes to Kevin and his football reputation. But deep down, there is no harder worker than Kevin Muscat, correct?
Yeah, absolutely. Kevin's a fantastic guy. We obviously, being at Adelaide before and Melbourne City, there was always a rival with Kevin. He's
fierce.
The person you hated the most in the opposition, but he'd be the first person I would have signed in my team, because he just gives 100% for the organisation.
And Luna. We also have Luna.
We need to. I feel like we could get Luna on a contract in Melbourne City. I feel like Luna would be a crowd pleaser.
Don't mention contracts and Luna in front of Michael, and he gets uncomfortable.
I'm just saying, George. I feel like Luna would be the biggest signing Melbourne City has ever done. I feel it.
As our mascot, I wouldn't say no to that. We should speak to Brad Rouse and the CEO and say to him, have you ever considered Luna as a mascot for the club? Might be something for the new season. We could be onto something,
Michael. I don't know. We could be onto something.
Correct. Speaking of doing new things, what have we made of the last, I suppose, month and a half now? We've seen PK, Patrick Kisnorbo, leave and go to France to coach or to manage Troyes. What have you made of the arrival of Rado, who's been a part of the City family now for a number of years, doing a tremendous job for the W League side, the women's team? How have you seen the move, and how's everything fitting in? I mean, you'd have a unique perspective.
Yeah, it's always difficult to lose a coach in the middle of the season, or early in the season, and it happened very quickly. So, but we're very lucky to have Rado, someone like Rado's experience and character, skill set, in our organisation. And he's stepped in, basically without any notice, and he's done a terrific job. And the players have adapted really well. He's not skipped a beat. We've had a couple of draws the last couple of games, but against two very good teams who are defensively very sound. He's done a great job, George. He's a great person. I'll reiterate again, we want to have good people in the group, and so far Rado's done a great job, and as I said, the players have adapted really well and accepted a couple of changes that Rado's made and accepted him into the group as well.
Do you think, Michael, for like the City group and things like that, do you think that ease of transition for Rado stepping into the men's squad, that you have a philosophy around the club and a playing style? Do you reckon that's helped his transition into that job?
100%, and not only Rado, it's helped. It helped PK, move from the academy to the women's team to the A-League side. It helped Rado move from the women's league to the A-League side. Our assistant coaches, Ralph Napoli, who's now has gone with PK from academy and sports science into our coaching. Peter Kratky, who now is an assistant coach of the A-League from the academy into our A-League organisation. John Maizano, who's also now an assistant coach at A-League level from our MPL into our first team. So it does help, to have that type of structure and all of club football philosophy. That takes care of that part of our game, which is really important to us as a group, not just as a club. And then, as I said, having good people in the organisation, it makes me proud to be able to promote those people internally, because I think there's nothing better and more powerful in an organisation when players and staff, whether it's coaches or sports scientists, can see that there's a pathway and they can be promoted and they can move because of the work that they're doing.
Young Dario has stepped in where his father was holding the reins, and he seems to be. I'll defer now to Pokuah because she's watching all their games. How's he doing?
He's doing really well. I commentated their game against Western Sydney on the weekend.
He's pretty hands-on, isn't he?
Pretty hands-on. They have such a great foundation as a team, but they've got that flair, and with Rojas coming back into their squad, I think they're going to be a really big threat heading into finals, and they are a great team, and he's done a really, really good job so far.
That's the commentator speaking there, Michael. That's the young woman from Paramount Plus just telling you that from her professional perspective, you've done okay and the club's doing okay.
I think she's actually given a good summary. It obviously helps having Rado as his father, and they live together in the same house, so you can imagine it'll be football 7
breakfast,
days a week.
lunch and dinner.
Yeah, absolutely.
Oh, wow. So
he's got no choice. But Dario has shown an interest in coaching basically ever since. I had him in Adelaide United as a relatively young man, and even then he was talking tactics and football and philosophies, and he could see that one day he was going to be a coach just like his dad. So Dario's doing a great job.
One of my favourite things because obviously seeing Rado as the head coach, he's a yeller, Rado. You can hear him from wherever you are. I remember hearing Rado yell, TJ out there. You could hear him. But Dario's a little calmer. It must be weird. You'd be like, the volume's like gone down. You're like, is everyone doing work? Or because you could hear Rado, but Dario is just so quiet. It's fascinating.
He's the silent assassin, Michael will tell you.
Yeah, maybe he's doing more of the screaming at training. I don't know. But they're both relatively calm people. Yeah. I think probably Rado was a little bit louder, but Dario's got his own style, but obviously very similar to his dad. But again, doing a great job, and we're really proud to say that we're going to bring another player through the journey from playing to coaching, and hopefully he keeps going, and one day he may be an A-League coach. Who knows?
There you go. The Global Institute of Sport is our sponsor each and every week on the State of Our Football Nation. This is FNR, George Danikian, along with Pokuah Frimpong. We're talking to our special guest, Michael Petrillo, who's the talent acquisition man who has watched over Melbourne Citys stocks, playing stocks for the better part of the last 7 years. Valon, Berisha, a character and a half. We've had a few weeks now to see the man, to understand the style of play and the sort of nuisance he can be when he wants to be. What have you made of his arrival?
Yeah, Ballon has started quite well and found his feet quickly. I think what we get from Ballon is 100% effort every game. He's a bit of an energizer bunny. He just doesn't stop. And at training as well, he's always encouraging the other players, particularly the young ones, and pushing them and driving them. He's a great professional. He looks after himself probably as well as anybody I've seen in the game. He watches everything he eats, everything he drinks. He gets his rest. He's a real professional. So a great role model for the young boys that are coming through the team. Probably if you asked him, he probably would have liked a few more goals and assists to go with the work rate, but that can come. I mean, we saw Matthew Leckie last year start off slowly and then suddenly finish with a bang and has gone on with it again this year. So we hope that he scores his first goal and then he because he's always had a good goal scoring record wherever he's been. So we hope that they will come. That will be the next part of his game that will take him to another level. Richard.
I love his Van der Ven. Yeah, he's again one of those who arrived. I thought quietly. We could see from the moment he ran onto the pitch, he wanted to make a difference, and he's starting to really assert himself, isn't he?
Yeah, Richard started a bit slower than Ballon because he copped an injury, unfortunately, and it kept him out for 2 or 3 weeks. So he didn't have the same start as what Ballon did. But once he started playing and found his feet, I think, he's scoring goals, he's providing assists again, he's non-stop, he's got a unbelievable engine. He can run all day, and he just loves playing football. So we're very lucky to get 2 foreign players with who have got that sort of ability to run all day and are just great professionals. And of course, without forgetting Florent Berenguer, who's now starting to come back. So we're blessed in the midfield with Aidan O'Neill as well. So to have some really quality players in there.
I've got to commend you on Florent Berenguer because I know the story probably better than a lot of other people, and we maybe haven't given people a chance to understand how much he had to go through. He and his wife arrived with virtually no English, but everything they've done from that day, from that arrival, has been to make themselves better, to be contributors. I think they got burgled inside the first few weeks of his arrival. So he then he got injured, and people, of course, very quick to judge. And then we needed to see him get some time on the pitch and play some steady football, and then we started to see the creativity within the player. He has been a revelation. At times his injuries have cost him and us, but my golly, when he's playing, he's just a terrific player.
Yeah, he is, George. And, probably the first year when he played, I think he was probably played out of position. He was playing as a winger under Warren Joyce, and we really didn't see the true Florent. But, once Eric came in, he started to flourish and playing in his normal position. And I think last year he was outstanding. And for me, clearly the best player in the competition. Very unlucky not to have won the Johnny Warren medal. I'm not sure why he didn't, but, as I said, I thought he was clearly the best player in the competition. And, unfortunately copped a nasty injury at the start of this season and missed a fair chunk, but now he's back to full fitness. He's training really well and putting pressure now on the incumbent midfielders, which is great. Keeping pressure on players, and I think we'll see Florent back to his brilliant best again very soon.
And I have to agree. I think he was the best player in the competition. He's just so fluid on the ball, and his vision. I'm a big fan wonderful. Of him as a player. But you've also got some really good young players coming through your squad, and to keep the balance of young mixed with a lot of experienced players is really, really difficult because it's a precarious situation. How do you kind of find young players? And do you look at something different when you see young players compared to players who are a little bit more established?
Yeah, we tend to not worry about the physicality of the players, whereas, without mentioning any clubs because I don't know them intimately, but a lot of clubs tend to look for the physical qualities at an early age, and And that can always be the wrong way to look at players. I think if the players are smaller or haven't quite developed yet, but you can see they're technically very good, they have good engines and they're good people, then, we tend to give them time to develop physically. And we have a very clear and defined characteristic list for players for different positions that we stick to and seems to have given us a lot of success. We're very lucky we have a good recruitment team. We have a full-time recruiter here in Melbourne. We see a lot of the games and we have excellent coaches in our academy that first of all understand the type of footballers that we're looking for and the type of football that we're trying to play. And we don't concentrate on the results in our academy. And I've said it to our coaches, whilst we always want to win, and I think it's an innate characteristic of any human being to want to win.
Did a lot of winning last season, your NPL side. They did a lot of winning just a little bit.
But it was never the focus. If you look at our NPL team, it was the average age was 17, just over 17 years of age. And the year before was about 16 and a half. So we go in with it to pick our best young players, regardless of their age. And if we win, that's fantastic. And if we don't, and we develop players, it's also fantastic. We don't put any emphasis in having to win, the under 12s, under 14s, under 16s, or under 18s. So, it's more about developing players and individuals and teaching players the City way of playing football.
We've watched Marco Tilio's rise. Young Jordan Boss starting to do some bloody terrific things. Okay. Where did you find Jordan Boss?
Yeah, Jordan came into our academy, crikey, I think it'd be about 5 or 6 years ago now.
5 or 6? What was he, 12?
Yeah, he was. I think he was 13 or 14 at the time, and doing well. Him and he's got a younger brother that's no longer with us now, just because of the time to travel from Point Cook, which is where they live. But Jordan again, took a little bit of time to grow physically, but you could see, on the ball, he was one of those naturally gifted players, and loved to attack and loved to go past players, and sometimes would make a mistake, but you don't want to diminish those qualities in a player. We encourage that, and now he's grown physically. He's a bit of a beast. He reminds me in so many ways of Matthew Leckie at the same age.
Wow.
So he's going to go on to really great things. I think he's going to have a great future if he keeps his head down and keeps working hard.
Michael Petrillo, is it my memory right or wrong? Were you there at the very beginning when Matthew Leckie was putting his hand up to showcase his wares? Were you one of the team that said that young man's going to make an impact?
Yeah, I signed Matthew from Bulleen, George. He actually came to live with me for a couple of months because he couldn't afford to move into a place in Adelaide, and it was only 18.
Goodness gracious.
Very similar to Jordan Boss, just, a good athlete, but good on the ball, a good young kid, never fazed by anything. And obviously looked at followed his career. He spent a couple of years with us in Adelaide, and then went to Germany, and it's just been nice to be able to have him back, and it feels like I've completed the cycle with him. But he hasn't changed too much over the years, unlike me. He still looks like he's an 18-year-old out there.
Well, it's interesting you mention that, because every time he appears on camera, Tara Rushton struggles to concentrate for the next 5 minutes. But what I was going to say is you haven't been asked to be the godfather of the children yet?
No, unfortunately, they were all born in Germany, so I wasn't around. That would have been a lovely gesture from Matty. But he's just a great kid, and I said he's been brilliant for us. He's had a great career, and sometimes I think his career may have gone under the radar a little bit. When you think it's 10 years in the Bundesliga, I mean that's a hell of a long time to be in one of the top leagues in the world, and playing regularly. We've seen his quality coming back to the A-League, and I think, again, I might be biased, but I think so far this season he's been the best player in the league by a mile.
And obviously in the A-League he's been doing really, really well, but that World Cup run for the Socceroos was really incredible.
Yeah.
I think I've heard a few clubs talk about, I don't know if it's necessarily in the A-League or just abroad, but it's really important for them to try and get players that are able to play in the national teams, because that is a really high representation of your club, that you're able to produce players of that standard. Is it kind of a thing at City that you really are trying to push to get these players to the best of their ability so they can make the national team and things like that?
Yeah, absolutely. We say that in the academy, that we're trying to produce players that can go beyond the A-League. Of course we want them to play for Melbourne City, but if we're aiming to develop players that can play in the top leagues in Europe, we're going to end up with, and if they don't go, we're going to end up with very, very good A-League players. So we always want them to push, and we want them to aspire to be the best they can be, but we want to set a really high standard. As I said, we want them to be better than good A-League players. We want them to be good top league players in a global sense, and we're starting to produce some of those over the last few years, and it's something that we're incredibly proud of, as much as we love the fact that we're playing in grand finals and winning championships or premierships and whatever. But, what gives me as much pride and sometimes a bit more is to see these young kids develop through our academy and go on and achieve things, and long may it continue.
Michael Petrillo is our special guest on State of Our Football Nation. A Women's World Cup just around the corner. It's getting closer and closer and closer, Michael. How many of our young women are likely to put their hand up and be in that final squad for the Matildas?
Well, George, if you'd asked me a couple of years ago, I probably would have said 8 or 9, 10, because we had so many of them. But as you know, they've all left to go to the top leagues in Europe. But, I think we've got 1 or 2 that would be pushing. Certainly I think Holly McNamara would have if it wasn't for a knee injury, but hopefully she'll be back hopefully in the next few weeks she'll be back on the field. And if she does really well, I'm sure that she'll be in contention. Briley Henry's done really well for us. And, we've got a couple of brilliant young players that we've been able to secure this year that have done really well, and hopefully they have a future with the Matildas in the years to come. It's going to be a difficult squad to get into. We've got so many good players playing around the world now, and I hope that maybe we can sneak 1 or 2 in there.
I think you might have a chance, Michael. I'm not sure that squad seems really difficult to break into, but yeah. I'm a big Holly McNamara fan, and I cannot wait for her to be back in the league. And your attack, I'm thinking about all the players. It's very scary, very, very scary, that attack that you have at the moment. And
I should mention, Michael, that Pokuah is a huge fan for young talent. She's also an Arsenal fan, which makes it awkward in the studio because the red mist occasionally rises. But she's very proud. But more importantly, she has a real love for attacking talent. She sees it. She loves it because for what it achieves. It excites fans, and Pokuah understands that it is the entertainment business, and if you're not making that effort, then you're leaving yourself perched on the edge there, not providing. The club has tried to do that over the last half a dozen years while you've been there. In the early days when it was Melbourne Heart, we had some exciting players. Alex Terra was terrific, but suddenly we've got a crop of youngsters and some oldies. Andrew Nabert still, when he wants to just turn it on, flick the switch. There are things that he does that very few other people are even prepared to contemplate, and the sheer fact that he tries it scares the hell out of defences.
Yeah, no, that's exactly right, George. I think we've seen him score some spectacular goals over the years and do some amazing things. And, I'm sure we're going to see a lot more of it as the season progresses. It's been tough for him the last few weeks. He's had to come off the bench. But, when you've got Tilio and you've got Lecky on the other side, it makes it really difficult. But we're blessed to have those types of players in our competition and in our team specifically. So, it keeps pressure on everybody to perform.
Any new faces coming, male or female?
No, well, we think that, obviously with Florin coming in, it's like a new signing really for us because he didn't play the first 8 or 9 weeks. But,
Correct.
The girls, as we alluded to before, we've got Holly coming back in the next couple of weeks. Excited to have Rojas back in the next couple of weeks as well. So, we can get Wilkinson and Holly and Rojas, Riley Henry, running amok up forward. I think we will be able to cause a few problems.
Dario's got a lot of headaches. He's got a lot of headaches. A lot of combinations.
Pokuah is smiling from ear to ear. She loves attack.
I'm just thinking about it, and I'm like, this player does this really well. This player does this really well. This player, and it's interesting because Hannah Wilkinson's such a different player, and it's provided such a different option for them going forward, different to when they had Rojas. I'm really intrigued to see how Dario will figure that out and get that all working really seamlessly.
Michael, how are the facilities at the club doing? We're almost, as I said, we decommissioned what was the old facility at Bandura, but we're now almost getting to that stage where the dream at Casey Fields is almost where you want it, isn't it?
Well, it's taken a bit longer than we would have hoped, George, with a few construction delays. So, and obviously a little bit related to COVID, but material shortages and things like that.
Logistics.
Yeah, we're a little bit behind schedule, but the shell is up. We're about. I think they're about to put the beams up to build the top floor, and we're on target probably for about I think August completion, which will be fantastic. And we'll have world-class facilities for the players to walk into in the pre-season.
I can just say, for me personally, just because I live in the southeast and I live in Berwick, I am so grateful that football games are getting played in the southeast because I do a trek. out to the city and everyone's like, oh, this is easy, this is close. And I'm like, well, why don't you come down to the southeast and watch some football? And they're like, oh, this is so far. And I'm like,
so City have done it.
City have done it. Now you know how I feel about having to travel long journeys. I'm happy it's 15 minutes away from my house. Thanks, Michael.
No problem. It's a great area to be involved in. It's going to be a real hotbed for football in the years to come, I think.
Michael, before we let you go, and once again, thank you very much for helping us out. Australia Day, it's been a very busy one, but we started off the conversation by saying that the club had the opportunity to have a wonderful contributor to the club's growth and support. And then we're talking about Sue Crow, our community manager, community affairs manager for the better part of half a dozen years. Terrific lady, and she's been on in the Australian Honours list, which is tremendous, as have a number of others. But and we're getting the facilities sorted. But I'm just going to ask you a question regarding Garang Kuol. Now, you would have seen the arrival of this young man. You would have got a glimpse of him. What have you made of him, and what do you expect? Is the hype a distinct possibility to be realised?
I think that's always the possibility, George. Again, I probably would have liked to see him play a few more games in the A-League. He didn't start a lot of games, and sometimes players can go a little bit too early. And I just hope he gets game time, because if he has a lack of game time, that'll set him back. But he's certainly got a lot of potential. As I said, sometimes I think players go a little bit too early. I'm hoping it's not the case with Garang, and he does really well. But if you look at the Aussie boys that have gone over recently, they've been a little bit more mature. They've played 50, 60, 70 games and then gone over, and they've all done reasonably well. So the most important thing for him is to make sure he's at a club where he gets game time.
Michael Petrillo giving us a sense of what he's always looking for when he's recruiting or acquiring new talent and signing them on. The chances of a second division, does that excite you too?
Look, I think it would be great. If we can get a second division up and running, it's something that we've never had. We go back to the old NSL days, back to 1977, we've never had it. It's not an easy exercise. Clubs that are coming in have to make sure they've got all their financials right.
Yep.
And they're backing. Because the last thing I'd like to see is these clubs that have been around, for 60, 70, 80, 90 years, all of a sudden fold after 1 or 2 years in a second division because they basically can't afford it. So I think we need to make sure that the structure around the competition is right and the financials are right. Because as I said, those clubs, and some of the old NSL clubs have been the lifeblood of the sport, and I hate to see them go under because they can't afford to be in that competition. But let's get the structure right first, and then I think it's a great idea. And then hopefully, we have a vibrant A-League as well.
I was just going to say, Chris Nicker was at the Melbourne Knights the other evening to acknowledge 70 years the club's been around. That's some sort of contribution to the game, because I can remember a young, nasty talent. Sorry, it's just I'm talking about the V-Bomber. The first time I saw him, I thought, hey, he looks good. Then I went, damn, he's good. Then I went, just damn, why is he playing for them? He was something, and he's still a remarkable young man. Doesn't make too much noise. Doesn't really, spend too much time talking. His strength always was playing, and I'll never forget the wonderful energy that both he and a young Harry Kuehl managed to engender and create every time they ran onto the pitch for their then club, Leeds, which people would sit there and go, my God, it's powered by Australians. How can that be? But they did, and Harry Kuehl in that first year when he burst onto the scene got the young English footballer of the year. Just think about it. He was acknowledged. That's how good he was. And young Viduka, who came from Celtic via Dinamo Zagreb, I think, just burst onto the scene and scored prodigious goals. Did you ever think he was going to have the career that he had?
Oh, look, I saw him like you did, George, as an 18-year-old. Yeah, he was a special talent, and I think he was always going to be successful overseas. Had a great career. A great player. And this I was talking about, we don't want the Melbourne Knights and the South Melbournes and the Adelaide Citys of this world that have provided so many Socceroo players over the years.
And coaches.
Coaches, absolutely. So if they come into a competition, we want that competition to be strong and vibrant so they can excel in it.
Michael Petrillo, as always, thank you so much for giving us so much of your time. Continued success at the club. All the very best for the rest of the season. And we look forward to seeing you when the Women's World Cup gets underway.
Yeah, absolutely. And thanks for your support, guys. Much appreciated. Keep up the good work.
Thank you. And our best to Luna.
Yes, best to Luna. I want to see her at the next game.
Yeah, she's happy now. Thanks, George.
Thank you. All the
Thanks, guys.
Michael Petrillo. Very good. The Global Institute of Sport has been our sponsor and has been for a number of weeks and continues to give you an opportunity. If you want a career in the game, the Global Institute of Sport is providing some fantastic opportunities. And check their website. Certainly worthwhile, and we thank very much Michael Petrillo. What did you make of that? You from your perspective, got a bit of background?
No, I'm absolutely fascinated. I love hearing talk about recruitment because obviously as fans we see the flashy and we see all the goals and we can pick up when someone's done a really good move, but it's interesting to see what goes into it for a club and how much the human aspect is really important just as much as the skill ability as well.
His eye for talent, not bad. Lecky, Awer Mabil, and a host of others.
It's not bad. It's not a bad list.
What did you make of his run through the A-League women's side for Melbourne City?
They are a quality side. They really are. I think they're almost a lock. Not mathematically a lock, but a certain, I think, lock to make finals. And they've recruited really, really well because I was end of last season, particularly their defence. They have obviously Emma Check started the season with an injury, and I'm going to confuse either Tori Tumeth or Winona Heatley. One of them has an ACL injury, and my brain is not figuring out who is which. But there's such a young backline besides Emma Checker, and they've recruited really well defensively, and they're doing well. So.
I remember last year when we had a chat, and it wasn't on this program. It was I think behind the scenes, and you said to me they've got too many holes, yeah, and so it turned out to be. When the pressure got really hard and hot, there were areas of the club or areas of that defence that just didn't stand up. And they've gone and done their homework, and sure enough, they've shored up certain areas. Now it's about, as they say, coming together and watching them, fit in, and that glue now starting to run through. There's also the other thing we need to remember, a different voice.
Yeah, there is.
No sooner had they started the season under Rado that
Dario was in.
Dario was asked to step in.
It's interesting. obviously like your Spurs side, for instance,
Yep.
they are a really good defensive unit. Like Newcastle, they defend like just the normal defense. But for Melbourne Citys women's side, their attack is their best form of defense. They have to be on the front foot. They have to be pressing. They have to be pushing forward, and that's their best form of defense. And
But doesn't that require a tremendous midfield?
No, it does, and they have a good midfield at the moment, and really good wide players that come in to help and work with that, and it's interesting the way their side. I'm fascinated to see how they'll work with Hannah Wilkinson up front, because she's a much different striker to Maria Rojas and Holly McNamara really around a policy, and they love to run and move, and how they'll link.
What's she like with her back to the goals?
Who, Hannah Wilkinson?
Yeah.
I think she's more, maybe her hold-up play could be better.
Mm-hmm.
She's more of a traditional just goal scorer. She can score the header inside the box. She's a real poacher. So
she's a focal point.
She's a focal point, and that it's been weird to see the side kind of have to evolve from playing with Rojas at the start of the season with Briley Henry and Polsena. There was a lot of movement going around. And I think there's been almost a teething period of time with Hannah Wilkinson. Even though they had her last season, the squad is different. But I think it's clicking. They won that game 1-0 against Western Sydney, who had chances, but they were pretty confident. So it's going to be great to see the combination. The options they have is nice.
Your top four, is it starting to really firm?
It's top five at the moment, because I
top
think
five.
because
Victory is one?
Yeah, so got Western United at the top of the table. It's between Western United and Adelaide United who will make that final fourth spot, because I think Sydney FC will be fine, Melbourne City Victory, they'll be fine. But between Adelaide and Western, will Western be able to keep up now they've
maintain it?
Now that they've lost someone like Jess McDonald, a big international player, and will Adelaide finally kickstart their season and get the wins like they did last year?
Okay. What have you made of the A-League men's?
A-League men's has been good. Are
you impressed by Nick Montgomery and what the Central Coast Mariners?
I was just about to say this. I am a big Nick Montgomery fan. We've
had him on.
Yeah, exactly.
And you've heard the passion.
Exactly. He sounds like such a great person and a coach that understands his team and understand what they're good at and plays to that strength, and that you can't ask for anything more from a coach, and I'm really happy for the Mariners.
For every time we've asked something of him, he's come to the party. We've watched again their chair, Richard Peel, come to. By the way, we've been invited to go to the Central Coast Mariners, and they've offered to look after us. So you and I have to find a way to get to the Central Coast Mariners. By the way, overnight there have been some more results and more transfers. What have you made? I know we're jumping the gun and we're going overseas to the EPL, because I'm still bewildered by the fair play rules.
Oh, they don't exist.
And how they fit Chelsea. Has Chelsea spent £500 million, or am I just making these numbers up?
They've spent a ridiculous amount, and I was so confused. So I was like,
You're confused.
I was confused. I was like, let me go to the people who understand, who break this down. And I was like, I'm going to head to the Athletic, and I will.
What do they say? What have they said?
David Onstein, and they were like, because Chelsea they've kind of smartly.
It's smartly now, is it?
The contracts they have. Yeah. They've over these 7-year periods. Like if you see a lot of the new contracts that Chelsea are doing, they're over a really long period of time, and because of that, they have to pay a different amount. So it kind of technically fits under the. I'm butchering what is so beautifully said by someone else, but that was the gist of it. Because they've extended the length of their contracts.
May I suggest you weren't butchering so much as paraphrasing?
Yes,
Okay, so I've sat on the sidelines.
Yep.
Watching with bewilderment what Chelsea have been doing.
Yeah.
Can they make an impact in the second half of the EPL season? Enough to be in the top four?
No. I think that top four is
settled?
I think.
Or just about?
Just about. We're pretty close to, because the top four at the moment is Arsenal, Man City,
and Man United.
Man United.
Yep.
Man United are playing really well.
They're playing terrific.
So I think Tottenham is probably the only one outside of that.
But they're half a dozen points behind.
Yeah, but I think it's pretty like if Newcastle might fall away because Newcastle have been defending.
I haven't seen Newcastle look like falling anywhere.
No, but this is my thing about Newcastle.
Go.
They almost give me Tottenham a few years ago in the sense of they actually don't score. Recently, haven't been scoring as many goals as people think.
Yeah, that's
They've
valid.
been defending.
But hang on, who have they played? They've played Manchester United and they've played Arsenal.
No, and
two of the best teams in the competition.
That's for sure. And they defend really, really well. That's the thing they're best at is defending Newcastle.
Yep.
They're going to get points with these draws, but I don't know I don't know how many wins they're going to accumulate as. I don't think they're going to lose. They're the most confident I feel about anyone besides Arsenal that they will not lose a football game. But it doesn't necessarily mean they're going to win the football game.
That's a very good point. So you're saying that there may well be more draws in their final season runoff rather than wins. And as we've seen, if you want to make up points in a hurry,
you go
there's a thing that's called 3 points, and that means you've got to win.
Exactly.
One thing that Spurs have done in the past is they've avoided draws. They've either won or they've lost, and losses are not good. And I think we've got half a dozen at the moment, or 7.
Yeah.
How many losses have Tottenham? I think it's 7 losses, which to me is probably 3 too many. But the nature...
Yeah, you've got 7 losses.
7, yeah, it's too many. But
Newcastle have only got 1 loss, but 9 draws.
Yes.
It's a lot of draws.
So you see how you can be impacted by just not making the win.
Exactly, because I was like, I was thinking about it, I was like, Newcastle have been playing so well. And then I looked at the table the other day and I'm like, wait, how have Man United, who had a poor start, caught up to Newcastle?
Score wins.
Exactly, and these draws... not losing is fine, but these draws start to hurt you.
Correct.
How can you have...
Especially when others are jumping 3 points every time there's a game.
They've won 10 games, they've drawn 9 games. That's 9 points, but you're losing. You're leaving a lot of points on the table.
Correct. Something else, now you're part of the commentary team at Paramount Plus. Another busy round. Who are you calling this weekend?
This weekend, I've got a 3 p.m. kickoff, and it's Canberra taking on Western United at McKellar Park.
So this is critical for Western United. They've got to keep winning, but Canberra are the sort of side that can create problems.
They really are.
Very competitive.
Really, really competitive side. I saw them. I was commentating their game they did against Newcastle, and they won 5-1. Tremendous work. And then they lost to Wellington on Sunday, and I was like, wait, how has that happened? How has everything happened? But Canberra are one of those sides that they're in the middle of the table. Like, you could get them they could be really good on one day and really poor the next. So it'd be fascinating to see how Western United, without Jess McDonald now, how they match up, because it'll be a very close game.
When you're describing Canberra, you're almost describing the Brisbane Roar W League side last year.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah. On one day they looked invincible, and the next day you could beat them.
Yeah, because they're both on. Canberra and Brisbane right now are both on 11 points in the league. It's just Brisbane have a worse goal difference.
Yeah, the goal difference.
But yeah.
Let's bring it back to the men's for a moment, because I never thought I'd be saying this. There's a Big Blue tonight. There
is a Big Blue.
And it's happening at Amy Park. The first of the sanctions look like impacting the audience, the attendance. Let's hope it's a healthy attendance. The active supporter groups say they're going. Let's see how that works out. The club is saying, Caroline Carnegie is saying, they're not going to have our support. We can't stop them, but they're not going to have our support as they did in the past. Yep. So a lot of things up in the air. Let's see how it goes. But both are dueling for the wooden spoon. Is that right?
They are. Victory at the moment.
How can that be?
Yeah, Victory at the moment occupying that space. Because they didn't start the season. They were okay to start.
They looked terrific.
Yeah, they were all right, and they've just.
Remember what happened in the derby?
Yeah.
Huh?
Yeah, just a little thing.
No, they could have been 2-0 up.
Yeah.
And then they were suddenly 1-0 down.
Exactly. It's so. I think what has happened to the club, and I think we were speaking about this before the show today, of it takes so much to win. Like, it's not just about the playing on the field, it's everything around the club, the fans, everything matters.
Holistic,
I think that what's happened in that with the Tom Glover incident and the fans, it's affected the club on such a massive level that you can't really find your bearings because you don't really know where you are. Like, even though like they know all the sanctions, this season's it leaves a sour taste in your mouth.
Of course it does.
Everything that's happened. So it's really difficult space to be in.
You and I have talked about this in the past. I believe that the most important thing for any competition is to have sides that are seriously competitive.
Yeah.
And that competition just drives the others to try even harder. We've watched, the Central Coast Mariners, who have been in the doldrums for a number of years, suddenly emerge with a young crop of players and some really astute acquisitions from overseas. I thought, and I think Nick Montgomery and what they're doing, what Richard Peel and the others are doing at the Central Coast Mariners is seriously exciting. The Western Sydney Wanderers starting to look like more and more a side of substance. Can we see them scoring more goals?
Yeah, that is the question. I'm not sure what the answer is to that. I'm looking at this. I've realised I haven't taken a look at the top four in a minute. It's quite close. Like, obviously, the 5 point gap between City and Central Coast, but the same amount of points for Western Sydney and Wellington. It's great to see Wellington doing well. It's really, really good.
Hey, it must be super exciting for Wellington to be actually play at home.
Exactly. It was, it's fantastic.
They must have felt that they had a passport, but it didn't mean anything.
It didn't mean anything.
So
the passport wasn't.
And let me just tell you, that's the worst possible feeling.
Yeah.
Have you ever fronted to the airport and been asked for your passport and you've gone,
no, this
I haven't got it with
George,
me? And it happened to me once.
It's happened to me also once. I was on holiday in the UK.
No.
We'd left my cousin's house. We were heading to Gatwick Airport, and I'd realised that the night before I was rearranging my bag and I'd left the passport on the table, and we got there and I'm patting my pockets and I'm like, oh my goodness, I've forgotten my thing. And we were flying to Barcelona and I've completely forgotten my passport. And
So how did you get there?
I missed the flight, had to go, someone had to pick my passport up, and then I caught a different flight. It was awful, the worst feeling I've ever had. And I lost money at the airport because I lost my purse there. It was the worst day of my life.
If there is only any advice I can offer you, be Madonna and have your own flight.
Yeah, that would be nice. Maybe one day I'll save enough money for that to happen. But
no problems at all.
No problem at all.
Anything else you want to discuss before we pull the pin until next week?
Just want to ask really quickly your opinion on the Dwight Yorke situation.
What an absolute surprise. Let's mention something that needs to be pointed out. It's not as if the club hasn't been winning.
Yeah.
They won the Australia Cup.
Yeah, they did. They beat
the inaugural Australia Cup is in the hands of MacArthur, led by their manager, Dwight Yorke. What did you make of it? I was astonished.
I was.
And then I heard some scuttlebutt that this was a very interesting entree to get Dwight to Sydney FC.
Do you reckon that's the case?
Well, let's not pose too many questions, but let's just say this. In the event that between now and the end of the season there's an appointment to Sydney FC's coaching ranks and Steve Corica is asked to call it a day or he chooses to step away and we see Dwight Yorke, well, then you and I have said Hollywood does exist.
Exactly. It's Andy Harper. Who knew Andy Harper was in for the big scoops? Just announced it casually on TV, and it turned out to be correct. And I thought it was quite an interesting piece of TV.
Now, something for you to ponder.
Yeah.
Right? When you're musing as a commentator, be very careful you're not creating history. Yeah?
Yeah.
Yeah. So if you go, make sure you go with the right sort of, ammunition.
He was right there on this. Andy was right. He got it before everybody else.
Mm-hmm. I'd rather be right than be first. Let's see what happens. Listen, thank you very much for helping us get through yet another program. Again, our sponsor has been the Global Institute of Sport. They've been terrific. And once again, if you are interested in having a career in the game, check out the Global Institute of Sport and some of the many degrees that you can pursue. And the campus, of course, is available here in Melbourne, as it is in a number of countries around the world. So, again, until next week, thank you, Pokuah.
Thank you, George.
We covered some interesting territory and got an opportunity to acknowledge some wonderful people who were honoured last night in the Australia Day Honours. 5 all up, and James Johnson would be smiling from ear to ear. But, of course, the number one gong has gone to the Young Australian of the Year, young Awer Mabil, who's now plying his trade where in Europe?
Actually, I can't remember.
You normally are so quick to the gun.
But my brain today.
He's had to leave Cardiff on loan, and he's gone to play for...
He's gone to play for Sparta Prague.
Yes, in Czechia.
Czechia, yes.
This is the old Czechoslovakia, no longer now Slovakia. It's Czechia. That's what they're calling it. I wish him well. It's a beautiful part of the world. If you've never been to Prague, one of the most beautiful cities in Europe, in your travels, you've been to Barcelona, which is a magic city. I've never been to Barcelona.
I've never been to Prague. My
wife's told me 55 times that it's the most beautiful place, Barcelona.
One of my best friends is from Prague, and she's always like, you've got to go. So maybe one day I'll go.
Well, get your friend to give us a scoop on the Young Australian of the Year and how he's fitting in. Whole new language.
Yeah, I'll ask her.
Whole new culture.
Yeah.
All right. Until next week, then. You're listening to the State of Our Football Nation on FNR.